In our last video, we saw the blue-haired nepotism baby dart past him, zooming ahead like a caffeinated squirrel. She glanced back, locking eyes with him, as he wondered what she wanted this time. Then it hit him, it was a race now. She bolted forward, and everyone else followed like it was the last call at a buffet. The long march had transformed into a long race, which made sense given the 40-minute time limit. Minjun was hit with a surge of excitement as he realized she had just thrown down the gauntlet. Our boy wasn't one to back down from a challenge. The blue-haired girl sprinted ahead, taking the lead. She looked back at our hero, daring him to keep up. He immediately caught on and burst out laughing, knowing she was challenging him. The game was afoot, and the race was on. It was going to be a trek to the finish line, and Minjun had no intention of losing. He started running faster than a soldier who heard the mess hall was serving steak. He surged ahead of the competition, leaving them in his dust. They could only watch and yell for him to wait, but Minjun had one goal: to beat the blue-haired girl. The dungeon was rocky, and the fog made visibility a joke, but the blue-haired girl was determined. She wanted to win as badly as everyone else. Suddenly, she noticed something behind her. It was like a shadow was on her tail. Nope, it was just Minjun, grinning as he easily caught up. He told her this wasn't going to be too difficult for him. Confused, she asked what he meant. He just replied that he was talking to himself. Then, he dashed ahead, leaving her baffled by his incredible speed. He laughed hysterically, showing off as he took the lead. She stood there, panting, and wondered what kind of superhuman she was up against. Her mind wandered back to when she left the battalion commander's office and was swarmed by reporters. Time for Sun Yunseo's backstory. She wasn't used to all this attention. They bombarded her with questions about her meeting with the commander and if the rumors were true that she was a general's daughter with insane stats. She didn't know how to respond. It felt like too much responsibility. As she walked away, she heard whispers about her being a nepotism baby but still normal and not too arrogant. They didn't know much about her. As she walked away, she heard them speculate that she was going to be the best recruit of the year. She took off her jacket. Still in the flashback, by the way, she thought about our hero and how he smashed the redstone in one hit. She was impressed and curious about his strength. The scene switched to a training center where an announcer declared that the white team had won. What did they win? Let's find out. Sun was on a catwalk, waving a blue flag in her training attire, smiling as sweat dripped down her face. She made her way off the catwalk and rejoined her team to celebrate. The announcer shouted that the blue team's flag was captured by the white team, setting a new record of 3 minutes and 34 seconds. He told the white team to take a 10-minute break and called the blue team over as another trainer approached the white team. She told the girls they'd set a new record for the training center and that they could rest for now. The girls were thrilled, basking in their accomplishment. Her team celebrated while resting, proud of their comrade, Sun Yunseo, for single-handedly winning the training. Sun, not one to take compliments easily, blushed but had a faint smile, as anyone would when receiving unexpected praise. Later, we find ourselves back in the girls' locker room, where the women were engaged in various activities, some changing, others reading books, folding clothes, or scrolling through their phones. Suddenly, a short-haired blonde girl burst in, almost knocking the door off its hinges. She announced with great urgency that the record they set for capture the flag in the morning had been broken in the afternoon training. The girls were puzzled. How could such a record even be made? Turns out, it was none other than Kim Minjun, our MC, who had shattered it, finishing in just 1 minute and 2 seconds. This immediately caught Sun Yunseo's attention. She remembered the guy who had bested her without breaking a sweat. In the girls' shower, the atmosphere was more relaxed, but Minjun's name was on everyone's lips. This was during the time when he got a near-perfect score shooting the ICM bullets, and Sun Yunseo was getting increasingly annoyed by his constant record-breaking performances. Blondie kept bringing up Minjun during every activity or training session, and Sun had had enough. Even at midnight, when they were supposed to be sleeping, Blondie wouldn't stop talking about how he caught a hound the size of an elephant in the dungeon. Finally, Sun snapped, "Blondie, If you don't stop talking about Minjun, I'm going to set a new record for most pillows thrown at someone's head. Blondie, however, seemed to be in a Minjun-induced trance, unable to stop talking about him. Sun just wanted some peace. Eventually, she zoned out into a sleep filled with memories of her past.
Flashback.
A solemn figure was tying the laces on their boots. They had rough hands, the hands of a seasoned soldier. It was a bulky figure, the physique of a man who had seen many battles. A little girl approached him. It was none other than Sun herself as a child. The man was her father, a veteran of the Hunter Corps. She looked up to him with admiration, and in her dream, she stared at him while the background remained completely white and colorless. He was a huge source of joy for Sun, and his smile brought her happiness. He gave her a pat on the head, messing up her hair affectionately. As he left through the door, she watched him with yearning, not wanting him to go. In that moment, a small smile appeared on her face as she knew exactly what her goal in life was going to be. She was going to become strong, just like her father. She was going to keep everyone safe and make a name for herself as a powerful soldier in the Hunter Corps. And just like that, we're back in the battalion commander's office. He complimented her on the phenomenal training she'd been doing for the past 4 weeks. He had called her into his office to discuss something important and asked if that would be all right. She thanked him for his consideration and wanted to know more about what he wanted to discuss. He asked where she wanted to apply, telling her that with her exceptional grades, she could be dispatched to any division she chose. It was like standing in a candy store, but instead of candies, these were military headquarters. She just had to pick her favorite. She thought about her answer as the battalion commander insisted on knowing where she wanted to go. Did she want to be near her father or somewhere else? She simply mentioned the name of our hero, Kim Minjun. This left the battalion commander puzzled, trying to understand what she meant. He chuckled, "Well, if you're looking for more broken records, I guess you've found the right guy." She decided to clarify things. After taking a deep breath, she asked the commander, which division did recruit Kim Minjun apply to? Because that's going to be my poison of choice. And just like that, we're back to the race. Sun Yunseo is running, splashing her feet through muddy water. She remembered she didn't apply to this division just to have childish competitions with fellow recruits. As she tried to gain more momentum, she realized she provoked Minjun because she was a little upset. Maybe that's why he was mad and showing off. In her mind, he was her main rival during this assessment. He bested her each time they competed, first during the strength stat test and then during the agility test. Realizing her errors, she knew her jealousy had gotten the better of her. Determined to run faster, she noted she would apologize to him first. The goal was clear. She wanted to become stronger. She never intended to be number one. She came here to get stronger without her father's help. Making enemies was not part of the plan. She knew she had encountered someone extremely skillful and, instead of being her rival, he should be someone she learns from. She wasn't going to be childish anymore. As she reached her destination, the turning point stamp validation booth, Yunseo noticed Minjun had already gotten there. The man in charge of the stamps kept telling him to go away, but he stood there just to show her he got there first. As he ran past her from the turning point, he teased, "I almost fell asleep waiting for the slowpoke that you are." This embarrassed her, and the embarrassment quickly turned into rage. He had pissed her off real good this time. She started yelling at the invigilator to stamp her quickly because she wanted to get back in the race. As she dashed away from the turning point, she decided to forget the apologies. The very sight of Minjun's face enraged her so much she wanted revenge. And fortunately for her, when they emerged from the portal, they were all tired beyond expression. Of course, Minjun was just having fun. This was just another day at the office for him. The invigilator announced that Private First Class Kim Minjun was in first place with a record of 29 minutes. On the other hand, Private Sun Yunseo, the blue-haired Nepo baby, was in second place with 32 minutes. The invigilator congratulated Minjun, telling him he got a perfect score in every single stat test. Minjun thanked the invigilator, happy to just be there. That was the end of the stat tests. Every single hunter who passed would get to eat a delicious meal, and then gather in front of the training grounds for more assessment action. All the hunters yelled out an acknowledgement, showing their enthusiasm, even though they were so tired they could fall on the ground. They picked their jackets off the ground as it was time to head back for lunch. For a brief moment, our hero made eye contact with the blue-haired woman. Instead of being mature, Minjun stuck out his tongue and taunted her more. Sun was no longer annoyed, just embarrassed at this point. As he walked away, a familiar face found him. It was none other than Lee Dongjin, who told him he was being rude. Meanwhile, Sun just stood there watching. Her harassment and anger had completely died out as she giggled a little. She realized she was the one who fell for the provocation and, on top of that, she also lost. She didn't have anything else to say anymore. She just looked up at the sky and smiled, knowing there was good competition here. She could feel the cold breeze of the air touching her skin. It was almost as if she walked into heaven after emerging from hell, feeling refreshed as her sweat dried off. She straightened her head, preparing herself for the next assessment that was about to take place, and moved towards the rest of the group for a hearty meal after the tough stat tests she had gone through. After they had finished eating, it was time for the second practical examinations to start. At the examination center, we see a wooden club slam into the ground as it seems that the second practical examinations had already begun. There were a bunch of goblins standing around a lone fighter. The hunter had a sword in his hand and had already slain one of them. One of the goblins roared out loud, its yellow eyes piercing through and causing terror. The other goblin started laughing maniacally. It wanted to engage but was scared. The corpse of a dead green goblin sullied the ground, its tar-like blood splattered all over the place. The hunter was none other than Private First Class Lee Dongjin. He wiped the sweat off his forehead as he got ready to take on more of those ugly creatures. He looked at them, analyzing their movements so that he could mark his target. A blue goblin lunged towards the Private First Class. However, Dongjin was prepared. As he maneuvered his sword, he didn't expect both goblins to attack at the same time. The other one started moving behind him as well, and he was about to be caught in a pincer attack if he didn't make a decisive move. He quickly turned his eyes towards the blue goblin, knowing exactly what to do. He immediately blocked the blue goblin's wooden club from turning his face into pulp using his incredibly strong katana. Then he used his foot to kick the goblin in its chest, giving it a pretty good heartache and sending it flying far away. In the meantime, the green goblin had made its way behind him. But Private First Class Dongjin was prepared for any attacks coming his way. He moved out of the way of the club attack, barely managing to save himself from any damage. The counterattack was brutal as he slashed the goblin through the chest, carving into it as a fountain of blood started to spurt out of its cut-open upper body. Yet somehow, that evil little creature managed to land on its feet. Dongjin was annoyed, but most of all, he was frustrated that his sword swipe didn't kill it. The goblin was angry now, its irises turned red as the carved-up chest kept leaking blood. Both goblins were now standing in the same place, and they could overwhelm him if they decided to attack together again. As this fight was going on, our hero was looking at it from above and spectating. He stood up on a balcony in a spectator area where people could watch the assessment from afar without putting themselves in danger or confusing the goblins about their target. Basically, the second part of the practical exam was called the Specialty Weapons Proficiency, and it was way simpler than what our hero had expected. All they had to do was display the techniques they had learned in the Hunter course to the examiners. That was essentially the whole test, and it didn't matter how strong their moves were. All they had to do was follow the manuals in order to pass. Most of the applicants had chosen swordsmanship as their specialty. While our hero had gotten a perfect score, his buddy, Private First Class Lee Dongjin, ended up receiving a very high score as well. The invigilator congratulated him and was proud of what the Private First Class had managed to do. Yet something was lingering on his mind, and that was the main combat itself. As Dongjin struggled during the combat, it seemed that his fears had been realized. Minjun expected that his homie would struggle during the combat because that was one of his weaknesses in general. Goblins were closing in on Dongjin, as this was the last part of the practical exam known as the ability to handle monsters. People would spectate from above as a hunter would have to defeat for hounds. However, since Dongjin was a private first class, he had to defeat 3 goblins while wielding his chosen specialty weapon. As the goblins closed in, Dongjin managed to cut the green one in half, slicing through it like butter. Now, only the blue one remained, and it wasn't going to be much trouble alone. The splash of blood poured out of the blue goblin as it fell to the ground, breathing its last breath. Dongjin stood above it with the sword pointing downwards as he was about to stab it through the chest and end its life. He pushed the sword down, cutting through the skin, bone, and muscle tissue to pierce the goblin's heart. The invigilator announced that it took our boy a total of 7 minutes and 52 seconds to finish the ability to handle monsters test. I guess this wasn't a good enough number because instead of saying anything else, they just told him to return to his seat. The poor guy looked quite disappointed in himself, drenched in sweat, huffing and puffing from exhaustion as he walked away. He knew his performance wasn't as good as he wanted it to be. Minjun, still spectating, noted that his buddy had many opportunities to kill the goblins, but hesitated each time. He would either fall back or keep defending himself by guarding with his sword, and at times he would also get overwhelmed instead of attacking. Minjun wondered if his boy had no confidence in his abilities, but he did not want to make any assumptions. Dongjin emerged through the gates with his head down in disappointment. He felt as if he had let himself down. He walked past our hero, still feeling depressed after that subpar performance. Now it was the turn for our hero to show off his ability to handle monsters, and no matter what happened today, he was determined to become a corporal. He had confidence in himself and was determined to help his homie build confidence in his abilities too. The other examinees stood by in shock, looking at their fellow hunter as it seemed he had made a weird choice. Even the examiner and Sun Yunxiu, the blue-haired nepotism baby, were shocked by his choice. It was a black baseball bat, not just a regular one, but one with nails poking out at the head. Yup, our hero had chosen a baseball bat with nails as his specialty weapon for this test. The examiner was confused, assuming Minjun had picked a tough weapon for the ability to handle monsters test. However, our hero had a smirk on his face because he knew the one thing needed for such a test was something he already possessed: sheer confidence. As the gates opened and the 3 goblins emerged from within, our hero was ready. He knew that all he needed was some powerful impact. Smiling confidently, the goblins immediately began to rush towards him. The fat one was barreling towards him while the green ones were jumping around like monkeys. But Minjun just stood there nonchalantly, not worrying about anything. He gripped the baseball bat as hard as he could, making the veins on his hand pop. In his mind, these goblins were nothing but frail little rabbits. He swung his bat at an impressive pace. Imagine thinking you're a hawk, ready to snatch up rabbits with just a flick of your talons. That's exactly how Minjun saw himself. As the goblins charged at him, his bat swung with the precision of a hawk's dive. These goblins weren't your run-of-the-mill monsters. They were brimming with bloodlust, brandishing heavy clubs, but in one swift motion, Minjun's bat made them disappear faster than a magician's rabbit. For seconds, that's all it took. While others took minutes, Minjun reduced the goblins to bite-sized pieces of demon meat. The examiners, jaw-dropping disbelief. Perfect scores in every practical exam check. Goblins obliterated in one hit. Check. The other hunters erupted in cheers, but the main examiner and Sun Yunxiu stood in stunned silence. Minjun looked up, grinning at Sun Yunxiu, who was trying to fathom what had just happened. Minjun, arms raised in triumph, knew he was the most powerful hunter to ever grace this assessment. As the applause died down, Sun Yunxiu was left pondering what kind of reckless genius Minjun was. Evening fell, and the exam was officially over. The hunters gathered outside, near the buses that had brought them there. The examiner congratulated everyone but had a special nod for Minjun's stellar performance. Minjun was about to introduce himself as private first class but remembered his promotion to corporal. The examiner laughed, tapping his shoulder. "You're moving up so fast, you're forgetting your rank," he chuckled. Despite being the only one from their battalion to advance, the battalion commander was thrilled. Everyone crowded around Minjun, congratulating him on his promotion. They joked that if he hadn't passed, their squad would face some serious teasing back home. They also warned him not to become a bully when he reached sergeant, given his rapid ascent. Minjun was elated. His swift rise left no door closed. As they boarded the bus, Minjun noticed his friend Dongjin's disappointed expression. A pat on the shoulder reassured Dongjin that Minjun hadn't changed despite his new rank. But Minjun, being the rascal he is, had grand plans for dungeon training with the specialty weapons. On the bus, the other hunters eyed Minjun with curiosity. Sun Yunseo, determined to apologize, finally approached him. With a private first-class tag on her pocket, she had also advanced. She had excelled in handling monsters and was his closest competition during the exams. Time was short, and Minjun boarded the bus, taking his seat. Outside, the evening sky was a picturesque palette of colors. But Sun Yunseo stood there, resembling a lost puppy. She mustered the courage to apologize, but as she began to speak, her eyes widened. Minjun had his face squished against the glass window like a kid in a candy store. Minjun pointed at his lips, signaling Sun Yunseo to focus on his words. "Don't ever provoke me again," he stated boldly, adding a dash of drama to his already impressive performance. Though he didn't mean it literally, the sheer audacity of his statement left Sun Yunseo in shock. The bus roared away, kicking up a trail of dust as it sped off into the evening light. As she watched it disappear, she realized just how wild and unpredictable Minjun was. It seemed like he'd just slammed the door on any budding romance, but Inseo's respect for him only grew. Who knows, maybe their paths will cross again soon. Cut to the next episode. The bus speeds away from a bewildered Sun Yunseo. Although we don't see her, Minjun's clear message to buzz off lingers. As the bus hits the freeway and settles into a smooth ride, Minjun braces himself for the onslaught of questions from his comrades. They swarm him like bees, buzzing with curiosity about Sun Yunseo's lingering stares and interest during the tests. What's the deal? Why was she so focused on him? Minjun, cornered and with nowhere to hide, decides honesty is the best policy. She provoked me, so I showed her who's boss during the tests, he explains. The guys are flabbergasted, jaws dropping in surprise before they bombard him with more questions. They argue that her looks were anything but provocative, more like smitten, if anything. Like a pack of wolves, they surround him, miffed that he didn't seize the chance to get close to the hottest recruit in the 104th Division. She was the dream girl of many soldiers, and they couldn't believe he let the opportunity slip by. Minjun, visibly annoyed, declares, "She's not my dream girl. This only fuels their curiosity. If not her, then who is his dream girl?" Minjun leaned back and dropped a name that left everyone scratching their heads. Lumi. Who the heck is Lumi? The guys chorused. Minjun dived into an impassioned description, reminiscing about Lumi, the most beautiful woman in all of Dungeon Power Fighter. Her beauty was unparalleled, and he was genuinely shocked they didn't know about her. Their puzzled faces turned to annoyed smirks as they realized Minjun was obsessing over a video game character. But no matter, these conversations led nowhere because they were heading back to the training center, where life returned to the usual grind, devoid of any girls. Back at the center, celebrations were in full swing. Empty boxes of chicken wings littered the place. It was clear they had a chicken wing feast. The boys were chomping away like monsters at an all-you-can-eat buffet. Just as they thought the food was done, the lieutenant walked in with more. "Eat as much as you want today," he declared. Redhead and his lackey were pleasantly surprised by the lieutenant's generosity, guessing he was in an exceptionally good mood. The lackey gave Minjun a thumbs up, assuming it was all thanks to him. Redhead grinned at Minjun, thrilled and impressed that Minjun had already earned 3 stars. He even suggested Minjun had the potential to become a sergeant soon. Minjun just kept sipping his Pepsi, playing it cool. Suddenly, the door swung open. Would this disrupt the party? In walked Lee Jun, holding a big crate of beer. The party was just getting started. He called for all members of the second squad to gather in the lounge. The second squad boys jumped up immediately, while others looked on curiously. Lee Seung-ho strutted in, looking like he'd just won the lottery. After I reported the squad's dinner to the administration, it was like Christmas had come early. He declared. He made sure to mention Minjun's perfect score on the advancement exam in his report. As Minjun sipped his soda, he braced himself for the inevitable toast. Redhead and Lackey's eyes lit up when they saw the crate Lee Seung-ho was carrying. I mean, who wouldn't want a taste of alcohol in a soldier's camp? Lee Seung-ho, ever the brash one, told them to back off. The drinks were for Minjun and the second squad, not for a couple of greedy looky-loos. The room's mood soured as Redhead and Lackey left, the crowd muttering curses and hoping they choked on their disappointment. Redhead was especially irked, suspecting that Lee Seung-ho knew about Minjun's skills all along, which is why Minjun was placed in his squad. Whether or not that was true, Redhead wasn't getting drunk tonight. As the day wound down and the full moon bathed the HQ in silver light, Minjun decided to take a nighttime stroll. The street lights cast long shadows, making it the perfect time for a bit of solitude. He wandered to the back of the building, checking his surroundings to ensure he was alone. Clearing his throat, he prepared to summon something. "Emerge," he commanded, his hand gesturing to bring forth some of that demonic energy. From the dark, a puppet began to take shape, looking almost like a character from a Gratsuko come to life. Minjun couldn't help but smile at its adorable appearance. He asked the puppet how it had been, and it responded by happily swatting at a fly. Though Minjun was initially wary of how harmless the puppet seemed, he had plans to make it more useful. He didn't need it to be an assassin just yet. He had a different role in mind. As Minjun instructed the puppet to gather information like a covert agent, the puppet seemed more interested in its new fly toy. Suddenly, a loud and annoyed voice cut through the night. Minjun turned his head sharply, causing the puppet to jump in surprise. The night was about to get even more interesting. He told the puppet, "We'll call you Tiny from now on, so stop messing around and follow anyone who seems high-ranking." He wanted Tiny to gather information about any unusual occurrences, especially if they were related to demonic energy. Tiny put his hand out, asking his master for something in return for his loyalty. Perhaps Minjun realized Tiny was simply asking for permission to go. He formed a small vortex of demonic energy in his hand and approached his minion. Handing off the small vortex to Tiny, the puppet took it eagerly and dashed away in the opposite direction once he got a hold of the demonic energy. Minjun called out after him, "Be cautious and don't get caught." As Tiny scampered off, Minjun stood there, feeling a wave of anxiety wash over him. If someone caught him out here, it could trigger a full-blown emergency. His nerves were about to get a further workout as Sergeant Lee Seung-ho approached, demanding to know what Minjun was doing out back. Caught off guard, Minjun fumbled for an excuse. He turned around slowly and muttered, "I haven't had a drink in a while, so I needed some fresh air after the beer." Lee Seung-ho raised an eyebrow, asking if Minjun had a low tolerance. Minjun winced inwardly. Dark mages are pretty much immune to drunkenness. No matter the substance, alcohol, anesthesia, poison, or anything else, a dark mage's body instantly detoxifies and nullifies the effects. Admitting that would be a dead giveaway. Sergeant Lee gave Minjun a hearty congratulations on his advancement, and Minjun thanked him for the celebration and the beer. However, the sergeant warned him not to get too comfy or cocky with his new rank. "Keep up the good work," Lee advised. Minjun nodded, determined to live up to the sergeant's expectations. Lee Seung-ho left him to enjoy the night air but reminded him not to linger too long. The squad was going to finish the beer without him. As the sergeant walked away, Minjun exhaled in relief. He knew he needed to be even more cautious to avoid arousing suspicion. For now, though, he took in the serene moonlight, its radiance casting a calming glow over the HQ. The next morning dawned, brightening the HQ and ushering in a new day of discussions. The captain and commander pored over the scores from the advancement exams, and it was clear that Minjun was a force to be reckoned with. The commander had initially considered a drastic measure for those who didn't perform well, but Minjun's perfect score was a game changer. The captain pointed out that Minjun had set a new record by clearing the monster handling test in just 4 seconds. The commander recalled how Choi Soon-beam from the training center had been raving about Minjun. Now it made sense. Minjun had not only exceeded every expectation but also raised the bar for the entire hunter corps. The commander reminded the captain that Minjun was also the one who single-handedly took down the middle bats at the old reserve. The captain was well aware Minjun had been the first to charge into battle, showing a level of bravery and initiative unmatched by his peers. The commander was thoroughly impressed by Minjun's rapid rise to corporal in under a month, and his exceptional performance. He had no doubt Minjun would soon become a standout figure in the Hunter Corps, but there was a nagging thought once the entire Hunter Corps took notice, Minjun would be under intense scrutiny. The captain asked if the commander was referring to the Hunter's Special Forces Brigade and whether he truly trusted Minjun with such a significant responsibility. The commander, confident as ever, assured the captain that Minjun was more than capable. Having seen countless hunters, he knew that those who joined the Special Forces Brigade were destined to become Hunter Corps legends. And he was certain that Minjun was on the verge of becoming the next legend. Cut to a desert landscape with towering sand dunes and rocky cliffs shrouded in a foggy haze. Amidst this arid arena, a soldier clad in battle gear navigates the sandy expanse. Suddenly, reptilian monsters slither out from one side, while rock golems emerge from the other. Brute-like orcs and mischievous goblins join the fray, surrounding the lone soldier. The monsters roar and snarl, trying to intimidate him. But this soldier, unflinching, is none other than Minjun. With a confident smile, he surveys his opponents and asks, "So, you've all finally gathered in one place just for me." He then casually bonks his own helmet with his spiked baseball bat, ready for the showdown. The scene shifts to a hunter guzzling a grape-flavored energy drink straight from the bottle, clearly trying to fend off the remnants of last night's revelry. Dongjin, who looks like he's been run over by a freight train of hangover, stares at the bottle with a mix of regret and desperation. Minjun, in contrast, strolls into the room looking as fresh as a daisy. While Dongjin and his buddy are wallowing in their nausea, Minjun's pristine appearance catches their attention. Ponytail guy, barely able to keep his eyes open, asks Minjun if he's feeling alright. Minjun cheerfully responds that he's perfectly fine, which leaves Ponytail slack-jawed. "You drank like a fish last night," Ponytail exclaims. Minjun's stamina or lack thereof continues to baffle him. However, Minjun's attention quickly shifts as Sergeant Lee enters, sporting a towel around his neck and looking like he just ran a marathon. Ponytail, still in a daze, asks if Sergeant Lee is okay. Sergeant Lee, dripping with sweat but grinning, explains that he's fine. He's just been sweating out the alcohol and detoxifying his body. Minjun, meanwhile, has a brief fruity moment where he admires Sergeant Lee's soldierly physique. Though let's not ship this, Minjun's heart belongs to Lumi, the Nepo baby. Sergeant Lee inquires if Minjun has checked out the gym yet. Minjun shakes his head, not having had the chance. "Well, now that you're a corporal, you can use it as much as you want," Sergeant Lee says. Minjun responds with an enthusiastic, "Yes." As Sergeant Lee heads out, he pauses and looks back at Minjun. "Oh, and don't forget to try out the VR device for your squad. It's top-notch." Minjun's ears perk up at the mention of VR. His excitement skyrockets at the prospect of exploring the Hunter Corps' VR room he's heard so much about. Cut to Minjun standing outside gym number 2, where the VR device is housed. He's practically bouncing with anticipation, ready to dive into a new world. He grips the doorknob, turns it, and steps into what feels like the gateway to a technological wonderland. The room is an awe-inspiring mix of futuristic tech and interactive possibilities. Minjun looks around in wonder, though it's just a room, so the realism might be a bit confusing. But hey, he's excited. He heads straight for the control panel, eager to start exploring. After a bit of fumbling with the settings, he finally begins to navigate through the various scenarios. His curiosity is palpable as he prepares to dive into the VR experience. Minjun's eyes lit up as he saw the selection of monsters in the VR system: hounds, monster rats, goblins, and orcs. Without a second thought, he selected orcs. But why stop there? He decided to go big or go home. With a mischievous grin, he smashed the plus icon repeatedly, adding more and more orcs to the scenario until he hit the maximum of 30. It wasn't quite the Dynasty Warriors scale he'd envisioned, but it would do. Next up was weapon selection. Minjun's excitement was palpable as he chose his gear. He grabbed the VR headset and controllers, and as he put on the headset, the room around him transformed from a regular training space into a desert battlefield. Minjun found himself in full battle armor, wielding a baseball bat with nails protruding from the top. The countdown began, and orcs started materializing in front of him. As the 0 mark hit, the orcs roared and stomped, charging at him with fury. Minjun's anticipation was through the roof. He took a moment to appreciate how realistic the VR setup was. With a series of powerful swings, he began to knock the orcs around, their skulls cracking open with satisfying crunches as they flew through the air. However, even with the realistic combat and gratifying impacts, Minjun felt something was missing, so he cooked up a devious plan. He loaded the VR machine with 30 goblins, 30 orcs, 30 stone golems, and 30 lizardmen, pushing the system to its limits. The virtual world was soon flooded with monsters of every kind. Facing this overwhelming army, Minjun was ready for a real challenge. As the countdown ended, the monsters launched a coordinated assault. Minjun leapt into action, calling the attacking hordes cuties he was about to obliterate. His first strike shattered an orc skull, sending blood and orc fragments flying. He then turned his attention to a stone golem, smashing it to pieces as the orc's blood still coated his bat. The lizardmen and goblins fared no better. Minjun dismantled them with ruthless efficiency. He dodged a goblin's attack, then countered with a crushing blow that turned the goblin into a puddle of pixels. The other monsters, left in awe of Minjun's sheer strength, were no match for him. The battle raged on for several minutes, but the outcome was inevitable. The final lizardman met a brutal end, hitting the ground with a thud as Minjun stood victorious amid a sea of fallen enemies. He tapped his helmet to exit the VR experience, the simulation winding down as he removed the headset. With a grin from ear to ear, Minjun declared, "That was insanely fun. This is definitely the best thing since Dungeon Power Fighter." His excitement was off the charts, and he couldn't wait for his next VR adventure. As Minjun finished his VR session, a notification window popped up, announcing a new skill, Basic Blunt Weapon Handling. His eyes widened in surprise and delight as he reviewed the details. His proficiency with blunt weapons had noticeably improved, and he marveled at how effortlessly he could gain new skills. This was a game changer. He realized he didn't need to dive into dungeons anymore. The gym was his new training ground. Exiting the VR room with a sense of accomplishment, Minjun was already planning his next weapon experiments. However, his attention was abruptly diverted when Dongjin approached, looking frazzled and anxious. Minjun asked what was wrong, and Dongjin nervously pointed at the board next to the VR room door. Minjun's confusion turned to shock as he read the record, a staggering tally of monsters he had defeated in the second simulation. The sheer scale of his accomplishment was unprecedented, and word was bound to spread. Dongjin, visibly shaken, asked if Minjun had really defeated all those monsters. Minjun, seeing an opportunity to handle the situation while easing Dongjin's fears, suggested they have a chat in the gym. Dongjin, bewildered and apprehensive, questioned why he wasn't getting an explanation. Minjun's response was a cold, commanding look as he announced that Dongjin would be training. He pushed Dongjin into the gym, despite Dongjin's protests about his hangover, assuring him he'd feel better after a good workout. The door slammed shut behind them, and the terror of the training session was left to the imagination. Elsewhere, a soldier passing by the gym saw the record on the board and was floored by the sheer number, 120 monsters defeated. The soldier, presumably a corporal, was stunned by Minjun's feat and knew this news would spread like wildfire. The big question now was how this revelation would impact Minjun's life. The scene shifted to a snowy day at the base. Corporal Kim stepped out of the command building, his face a mix of awe and amazement, possibly having witnessed something extraordinary. Returning to the barracks, he found fellow soldiers lounging in the locker room. A nervous private informed Corporal Kim that everyone had gone to fetch snow removal equipment and that Minjun would be at the gym until scheduled activities began. However, the private inadvertently referred to Kim Minjun as the corporal, a slip that could have led to punishment. Surprisingly, Corporal Kim, now enlightened, showed no signs of jealousy or anger. He calmly instructed the private to find Minjun and let him know that the platoon commander was looking for him. The private, eager to avoid further trouble, hurried off. Back in the locker room, the remaining soldiers were engaged in a ridiculous bet about Minjun's promotion timeline. They even invited Corporal Kim to join. The bet involved wagering their entire monthly salary on how long it would take for Minjun to become a sergeant. The ponytail guy had bet that Minjun would rank up in 6 months, a prediction that the purple-haired soldier found amusing, but the ponytail guy remained confident. Intrigued, Corporal Kim decided to join in. When the ponytail guy saw Corporal Kim's bet, he was stunned to see that Kim had wagered Minjun would become a sergeant within a single month. The ponytail guy protested, worried about losing his salary, but Corporal Kim, Unfazed, simply waved and left. His confidence left the others in awe, with the ponytail guy remarking how even Corporal Kim seemed crazier than he was. Stay tuned to find out what happens next. Will Minjun rise to the challenge, or will this new mission be more than he bargained for? Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. See you in the next episode.